I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is All the Mods 9, and today we get into immersive engineering, and we get a little bit immersive with everything. So, I hope you guys are ready. Now today, judging by my outfit, well, we're getting into immersive engineering, and we have to complete some tasks in order to get an item that we need for the ATM Star, and that is a railgun. Yeah, we need to actually craft a gun in order to, well, progress through the pack. Now, I have an interesting idea. How about immersive engineering inside of this cove right here? Like actually having the machines embedded into the wall here while also keeping this organic sort of structure. Oh, I think that would be perfect. And then figuring out how to build around it and sort of link the machines from machine to machine. Because today, this mod requires us to build a few multi-blocks. Thankfully though, not as crazy as Extreme Reactor's multi-blocks. These multi-blocks are a little bit more complicated to build, but they're pretty small. For the most part, not getting any larger than a 9x9 structure. I think maybe even 7x7. Now, taking a look at the quest here in the All the Mod Star section, we can actually see that everything leads up to this railgun, and we have a couple of different things that we need to do. One is making these Duraplast sheets, and the other one is to make the stuff for the HV accumulator. Now, in prior packs, you were able to get these items, believe it or not, via the villager, but it looks like it may have been disabled in this particular pack, which is nice because going through this progression is not a bad thing. So aluminum plates are going to be required for this. We're actually going to be utilizing aluminum, and we're going to notice we need hop graphite. So we're going to be going through two different sort of progressions. Hop graphite in immersive engineering is sort of its own thing that is required for late game processing to make graphite electrodes, which allow us to make the arc smelter, which is a massive smelter from this mod that can smelt pretty vast or duplicate. But we're not really getting in it for that reason. We need it for this accumulator. But then we also need to go through a progression here that utilizes a fermenter and refineries in order to make Duraplast sheets. And all of this is not too bad. The thing we need though is going to be creosote oil. And to be able to get creosote oil and also get coal coke, which is the most time consuming process, I think we have thermal to thank for this. We could go about it the normal method by making a coal coke oven and all of that processing, but I think using a pyrolyzer from thermal, now that we have thermal in the pack, oh, that's going to make things so much easier. Now let's talk about the pyrolyzer. This thing right here basically will take coal and should turn it into coal coke and also produce creosote oil, going through the same process that you would be able to get to through immersive engineering, but a lot faster. So I'm going to upgrade the machine with the max tier, and it's so nice. Thermal adds these recipes where you can just craft things with fire charges. So I have all of that now set on auto crafting, and the only thing I don't have set up yet is plates being produced, but we should be able to set up automatic crafting of plates in the future with thermal as well. But for now, let's put the max upgrade. So to be able to upgrade this to the max, as of right now, there is a further tier that we can actually go to, even further than even this one, with a thermal add-on. So just within the base mod, this is the max. And then we can use linkage amplifiers to speed it up. It is going to cost more power, but at this point, am I really worried about power? Not really. So once this is running, look how fast this actually produces coke. So it's pretty quick, and it's going to produce creosote oil and hold 16 buckets worth of it inside of this. Now in this setup, we're going to learn even more about refined storage and its capabilities, one being fluid, because we need to send fluid around eventually, and we can actually use refined storage to do this. One of the best ways is to use an external storage and switch it into fluid mode and put it onto a tank. Now, you definitely want to be sure to tell it on here specifically what fluid you want to only go in this. If we set this to fluid mode, we're going to want to make sure to put that fluid in. So we're going to be using creosote oil, right? The best way to do this is when you have a bucket worth of it to simply put it into the filter. And then that is going to filter this and make sure that we only ever on a whitelist can put that fluid into this tank. The cool part is you can actually pull out and extract from this tank using refined storage as well. So let's get this thing up and running and just start producing stuff, right? So we definitely want to output our fluid automatically into this tank, and then that is going to be fine. And then we also want to make sure that our fluid goes down into an importer, or our items go down into an importer. So I'll just set up some importers on here, right? That's going to send into the refined storage system. And then an exporter is just going to export coal into our system from here. And just like that, we're now producing creosote oil very quickly and also producing coal coke, which is going into our system. Now that we've got that set up and it's going to be continuing to run, we can actually get into the fun part, and that is building out those multi-block structures. Now you may be wondering, how many multi-blocks are we going to need? And I also was wondering that. And so I think I have the amount proper that we're going to need. So a fermenter, we're going to need 1 of, a refinery 2, a bottler 1, a crusher 1, and an industrial squeezer 1. I believe that is all the multi-blocks we actually need to make, maybe aside from a press or 2. Now, the best way to know how to build out these structures is to use the engineer's manual. Now, the engineer's manual has all of the machines that we're going to be using inside of the book, and you can just search. For example, fermenter, you can actually just search and you get a little clippy that pops up, and right here's the fermenter. And this is the machine that we ultimately need to make. And we can stop this, and then we can stop it again, or we can pause it, and we can actually pick all of the different layers one by one. And note the red block that's in the center. This is telling us what block we need to hit with our wrench or hammer in this case, in order to turn it into its multi-block. So we'll eventually build out all of these components just like this, and we'll click that block and it will turn it into this looking machine. Now, it has been a hot minute since I've really played with this mod, so forgive me if I miss anything. Oh yeah, and for this, we're also going to need a lot of plates. So this is probably the time that we should probably set up the thermal plate automation. And I don't think automation for this gets any easier. Thermal machines are so nice and simple. You simply just put an input somewhere on any side, I think except for the face, and then an output somewhere. And we simply set blue as input and orange as output. And then you go ahead and make sure to turn auto enable on and then just upgrade it. I think the hardest part about setting up all of the plates is just simply making all of the patterns for all of the plates. So now if I want to craft, let's say 64 steel plates, this is how fast that it's going to be able to craft them. It's not insanely fast, but with the top tier of the base mods upgrades, it's okay, but it can definitely go faster. But that's something we might work on later on. Now, one other amazing autocraft that we can use thermal for is going ahead and utilizing some of this creosote oil. We can actually use a crafter to send a bucket and the actual fluid into here because they're both on the same input, and we can output a bucket that is actually full of this material. So all this is a simple fluid craft now that we have this set up, and we can say from thermal to actually make a creosote bucket. So this right here, we can say craft this with this recipe, and it will say send a bucket and also send creosote, and it should receive a bucket of creosote in return. And then we can actually use that, this recipe right here, to then craft the, let's see, immersive, I believe it is engineering or the creosote planks. These right here, the treated wood planks, that's what they're called. So the treated wood planks has this particular recipe right here. So yes, treated wood, which is a primary crafting ingredient in Immersive. And so there we go. We now have the ability to craft this. And just like that, I'm able to craft up treated planks. So just to kind of demonstrate this, it is sending the bucket and then doing the craft as soon as we have this ready. Oh, this is so good. And did you happen to see that, chat? It said oiled up and ready to go. So it's now time to get into the actual multi-block structures. Now, I do want to say OSHA does not approve this factory. Yeah, nothing that I build here is guaranteed to be OSHA approved. I mean, we are building it in sort of a ravine here. Now, the first machine that I want to build is this thing, the fermenter, as I mentioned before. And if we go ahead and we stop this, we can start to see each individual layer, and we notice that it's really only a 3x3 multi-block. And if we want to know exactly what we need, we can see these are all of the items specifically required. And the cool thing is when we have them all in our inventory, it'll actually give us almost like a checklist here, letting us know if we have them all. Yeah, and just like this, we now have everything. You can see they're all check marked when you have all of the ingredients inside. So let's start to build this out. And I typically like to go, where's the front? This is the front, and that means I need to sort of align it in that way. And whenever I start to break it down and build it in its components like this, I typically like to know where that face is at. And so with me knowing that this is the front, I can start to lay out all of these individual components bit by bit, getting the ingredients in my inventory that I'm going to need for each layer. And the easiest way to do this is to go, all right, well, I want to build a 3x3 right here. And so this is to keep the face going this way. I simply need to start building it out just like we've seen there inside of the book. And yeah, the multi-blocks do take a little bit of time to build, but this is the first layer. And then we can go, okay, I'm going to go up the next layer. And this is going to take this item. I wish there was a way to just like almost instantly build these. There used to be a projector that would actually show the blocks in world, but I think that was an add-on mod. Good old add-on mod from like a an oil-based refinery expansion mod that was a part of this, but that was a long time ago. All right, so this is going to go here. All of the beautiful cauldrons. And then, let's see. We go to the next layer. Oh, we also need the redstone port. By the way, the redstone controls. This is how you control the redstone. And usually these engineering blocks are going to be like the power ports. And then we just need iron on the top. That's pretty straightforward. And there we go. The multi-block's complete, but it's not fully complete just yet. This is the last layer. But what we're going to need is the Immersive Engineering's hammer. So just a simple hammer here. And to be able to turn this into the multi-block, we want to shift and right click on the center here. And we'll notice that we now have ourselves an industrial fermenter. So something to note about the ports that are on this fermenter. You're going to notice little copper nodes right here. These copper nodes are going to be your power input. The little red node here, sorry if you're colorblind, this is going to be completely off for you if it is, but this red port right here, this one is going to be where you send a redstone signal to this. And then remember that orange is output and blue is input. And this is pretty much across the board for almost every mod. That's kind of been something that everyone has sort of decided on. Blue is input and orange is output. And that is exactly how that works here. Now this machine has the ability for you to send items in. So you'll see the blue is the input for the items, but it also has a way of outputting, it looks like, items as well. I think you can output items as buckets, but in our case, we're probably just going to pull the fluid out of this fermenter. And how do we actually work a fermenter? Well, we need to send it organic material. Now we could send this plant material, but one of the best items, believe it or not, to make ethanol, which is kind of funny because this is around the whole alcohol production route, is we're going to make mead. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to use honey bottles to actually feed this thing. And that produces the most amount of ethanol per single item. And that's a single thing of honey. And now we know why we actually have an item output port, because it's going to output the bottles that we send it of honey. And so we can just recycle this back into our system. And so I've drug a line all the way over here from our refined storage system to allow me to insert the honey bottles up and craft them automatically. And then just right here, those bottles will just get recycled back with an importer. Now I went ahead and put a gate on here to give this thing some power. And then to turn it on, all I have to do is put the honey bottle in. I have my crafting upgrade. And this is now going to take those honey bottles and it should ferment it. And you just seen it use that glass bottle and it should ferment it into ethanol. And then my importer is actually taking these bottles, even though you don't see it going fast enough, it should be taking them out of here and then resupplying. And look at that, we're already building up quite a bit of ethanol. Now, something I noticed, I thought it was actually exporting the bottles, but it doesn't appear to be actually allowing me to pull the bottles out for some reason from here. And that's because I thought this bottom one down here was actually for items, but in reality it's for fluids, and this one is for items. So all I have to do to get that fixed is to just put the importer right here for the items. And now I should be able to pull these out. Yes, there it goes. It just took a moment, but it is actually working. And you can see all of the glass bottles are being pulled out. So now for the fun part, we actually need to build 2 refineries. So we need to eventually make these Duraplast sheets. And this requires this phenolic resin. And this requires a refinery. So we need creosote oil, which we've already got done, but we also need this fluid in a refinery. But this one actually is what comes from ethanol. So we can get to the, I'm going to try it. Acetaldehyde is what Google says. So I'm going to go with that, but we also need to give it silver plates. So we're going to need silver plate production inside of our first one. So silver plates and ethanol should produce the this one.
Acetaldehyde.
Yeah, that one. Now these structures are 3x5s, so I'm going to keep in mind the need for 2 of them, and then also we're going to need a plate press. Now the refineries look just like this. There's a pipe that runs down the bottom of them, light on the back, and then we have the heavy on the front. And then we just shift right click and it converts right here on this middle block. You know what? Interestingly enough, we may not actually need to constantly supply this with silver plates. This may just need to be in here. I know it's a catalyst, but it may just need to be in here to be able to allow the recipe to work. Let's go ahead and get it hooked in and let's see. Now to do this, I just need to simply hook in some pipes like so. And this is the cool part. I think it can go up like this, but I do want it to kind of flow around here and end up going into this input port right back here. And we're going to keep it with this sort of industrial vibe. And there we go. We now see ethanol flowing in here. And then if we get a gate, we can give this power just like so. And that should start processing, and it is. Okay, so we don't have to worry about any particular item going in here. It's just going to start producing this material. Now to just repeat the process up top. So now I'm just tapping into this one and running this up here. And then this one gets to start processing. But we do also need to send creosote to this one. So what we should need to do is place our exporter here and then make sure we are sending creosote oil, actually not through bucket form, but through fluid form, just like this. And that should now start filling up with creosote. Oh, hopefully. There may be some more things we need to do. Nope, there it goes. Now it's starting to fill up. And after giving this some power, we are now making that phenolic resin. I think I'm saying it correctly now. And so now we just need to send this into a bottling machine. And yet another multi-block structure that we need to put together. Now, when setting up your bottler, I think just like the other contraptions, or I call them contraptions, but multi-blocks, the belt kind of matters. So whatever direction you put this in, so if I have my belts going, for example, right, then the belts will actually be going right when the full structure completes. And this particular machine actually gets a fluid pump, which is a kind of cool machine. And just like that, we should have a bottling machine. Now, the bottling machine actually can receive a stamp. So we actually have to go through the process of making the stamp that's going to allow this whole thing to work. Before this, I am going to need an engineer's workbench, and then I need this very specific engineer's blueprint, which is going to be for plate press molds. And if I place that in there, look at this cool little effect that happens here. But I just need to place in my shears and this, some steel sheets, and we should be able to select, for example, the plate press. And that's going to allow me to place that on this. And I should be able to place that there, I think. Actually, how does that work? So I think I just need to send this through the conveyor belt. That's right, as if it was a bottle. And so let's go ahead and take this then all the way over here. And let's send that into the bottler. So now that's filling up. And so what should happen is this runs through. And that should run through this process. It looks a little stuck for some reason. This should bottle it up though. It would definitely help if I actually gave it some power. So giving it power allows it to fill up, and then it tosses both things out. So with that in mind, we're going to need to create some sort of logistics that separates the plate mold from the Duraplast sheet. And it's actually not too hard to do with this mod. And then we can just loop around the plate mold. And so I want to introduce to you one of the most overpowered items in immersive engineering, and that is the item router. One reason being that it can actually pull items filtered out of, for example, like a potion stand. And it's very, very powerful. And we're going to use it to loop the item or loop the belt back around onto itself. And so to do this, we are going to need a little bit of room. Let's go ahead and set the item router right here. And let's just use belts. So I think this will be kind of cool. We should be able to click this with our shift right click to turn it like this, and that's going to lay it on the ground. And we can send the belt in here, and we can see the green side here specifically. What we want to do is in the green side, we want to set this mold to be the thing that goes through. And so that should allow only this item, because I believe this turns it into a whitelist. And then we can just have a barrel, for example, on this side with the yellow, and we can say the Duraplast sheets, you need to go that way. And we can actually see this in action by doing this. So let's go ahead and get this rolling, and let's try this again. Let's go ahead and toss this on here. And then we should see that these items, when they go into this machine, will get split into their appropriate sections. So that's pretty cool. And now all we got to do is just loop this around, and we can put an inventory right here because these belts will send items directly into inventories. Now this will also send to belts just like this as well. So this will actually send into this belt, and that will allow me to loop this around. And one of the best ways to just simply loop it around is by doing this. And so now we have this that is going to route around and constantly produce. And so let's go ahead and just to demonstrate that, it's going to run through. It's going to do its process, split around, and then come back through, and bam, we have access to this looped, which is going to be pretty cool. And there it goes again. And then if we go ahead and put a storage right here, we should start to see these items now building up inside of the storage. It's kind of a cool little process, honestly. Now this Duraplast sheet is going to be used in combination with a vacuum tube inside of an engineer's workbench to be able to make these advanced electronic components. And these are what's used to make the railgun. Just one part of it, because we're also going to need to make the grips, and we're also going to need to make this HV accumulator, which is our next step. We need to make hop graphite. And that's going to need this bad boy, the crusher. So we don't necessarily need this. We could use crushing wheels from Create in this pack, but this would be how you would normally do it, is by using this bad boy. And this thing, like I said, is kind of ridiculous. It does cost a lot to sort of put it together. It's going to require, let's see, a lot of the regular engineering blocks, and then a lot of hoppers and a little bit of steel. So not too bad. The same size as the refinery, which is a 5x3, but this thing right here, man, is interesting. So here we go. This is essentially the crusher, and I believe this is all we need. And bam, it's ready to go. Interestingly enough, though, if we were to turn this on and stand inside of it, well, we might end up dying. I don't know if our armor is enough to keep us from dying, but this thing is pretty dangerous, and anything you put in here, if it was to die, they would get crushed up and voided. So yeah, you don't want to stand in here when you turn it on, but notice there's a little hole here. I think we can actually use an importer to send items directly into it from here. Otherwise, we would actually be dropping the items. Now, before I turn this on, I definitely want to get my squeezer up and running. And so this is the squeezer. Pretty straightforward machine here. It does use these wooden barrels, which do hold fluids, which are kind of nice. But there we go. So now we have this up and running. And this one actually has a neat little animation that we'll see once we get this running, I believe, of this actually pressing. But the input is back here, so I do need to get my conveyors. I want to run conveyors. Yes, it may be weird because I could just use pipes, but I actually want to run conveyors up here, and then we can just import directly into our refined storage system from here. So let's go ahead and turn these machines on, give them some power just like this. And I believe this one, yeah, this one gets power right here on this node, and we're almost ready to go. I'm just exporting onto the conveyor belt directly because this should accept items. And let's see if this works. So we need coal coke. And so let's go ahead and put that coke onto the belt, and you see it going on there just like that. And that should enter into the crusher. Now, I don't know if I want to limit this or not, but we'll see. We'll see how this works. I don't want it to build up, but this does kind of act like a hopper, dropping items in. You can see there, but I have no way of knowing how much is actually being crushed in here. And this is heading over to the squeezer, which is turning into that hop graphite dust that we want. But it only does the pressing operation when there's 8 of them in there. And yet again, I have put it on the wrong import. Oh, this is for fluids. I need to remember that. So this is the import that we want to actually connect into. Perfect. And there we go. So now it should be actually pulling out the hop graphite. And then all we have to do is smelt it. And then we have ourselves hop graphite, which is the final thing we actually need in order to craft the HV accumulator. This redstone bucket is simply water. It's super easy. Water and redstone makes this bucket. And there we go. We pretty much have everything now that we're going to need in order to create 18 of those railguns. So here's one of the final tasks that we have to do. We need to make some vacuum tubes. So I've got all of the vacuum tubes I'll probably ever need crafted up, and then we just need to add them with the Duraplast sheets. And there we go. We have 32 of these advanced components, and I think that is more than enough to be able to craft the railgun. Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, and also crafting up some electrum wire. It gives us 1. This would have gave us 2, but this process is also pretty slow. And it's another multi-block we would have had to set up, and just crafting it by hand is honestly not that bad. So I need 8 stacks of these. That's probably more than enough. I don't really need that many, but all of these need to be combined into spools. So I'm going to need tons of sticks, and that'll be 8 spools worth. And that should be plenty of blocks here in order to do that. So yeah, just having 2 alone is more, because we just need, for the final craft here for the gun, all we're going to need is technically 16, or we need 18 each. Yeah, that's it. So I think I have everything I need to call this a final craft. So yeah, let me go ahead and just toss these in. And can I go ahead and craft up 18 of these? I think I can. And there we go. We have everything now to make 18 railguns, which is how many we ultimately need for the All-the-Mod Star. This railgun goes into this section here, and yeah, is going to go for that Nexium emitter. And just like that, we now have ourselves a railgun. Oh boy. And hopefully it doesn't require anything. Like, I know I just filled this one with power, but hopefully that doesn't matter too much. The ones in my inventory didn't receive power, but yeah, whenever we ultimately craft this, that probably shouldn't pose an issue. And then we just got increased experience drops by creatures. Interesting. That was as a quest reward. We get quest rewards for all kinds of things here, so I've got a lot of quest rewards to go through. That's quite a bit. I tell you what, this looks pretty complicated, but it had to have been one of the easiest things I've done thus far. It was not bad at all. Now, there's still a few things I really want to do to this area, and that is kind of decorate it just a little bit. So with the snap of my fingers, we should be almost done. And with that snap, even though I can't do it because the audio doesn't let me snap, there it is. So I went ahead and used some sheet metal down here for some decoration, some scaffolding on the edge, and outlined everything with treated wood planks. And I think the natural look of things, it makes it look really, really nice, and also keeps that industrial vibe, which I think is very, very, very nice, and added some extra bits. Over here, though, I'm still missing some lanterns, which I could probably drop in on, for example, this. Boop, there's a lantern, and boop, there's a lantern. Perfect. That looks pretty darn good, and all of this is running now. Unfortunately, I am going to shut this off by picking this up, because we actually don't need any more of these sheets to continue being produced, because they're only really used for a few things, and that's making these circuits and the circuit backplates. And outside of that, we have really no need for them. That's part of the Immersive Engineering Redstone suite, is mainly what those sheets would be used for. So all in all, we are kind of done with Immersive, and this is immersively beautiful. I love it. So with that, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and give this video a huge thumbs up if you wouldn't mind. And well, with that, it is now time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that amazing thanks is going to go out to Uneasy Archer. Thank you so much, by the way, for your amazing support and supporting me over on the Discord and becoming a Discord premium member and supporting me in one of the best ways possible. Thank you so much for supporting this content. And guys, it's now time to say goodbye. I hope you did enjoy, and well, as always, thanks for watching. Bye!